Hi, this is part 2 of the pile of ashes, and the dream that I said that I was going to share is titled Detective Uncovering the Ashes. I need to give you some background. It's really difficult to do this. I don't really I've been struggling with God. I don't want to do it because it's he's just telling me now that it's important that I do it, so I have to do it. So in the last upload I said about my sister. Her name's Lynn. That she has manifested some strange sort of out of character behavior, and the Lord has sort of taken me back through my story to times when it happened, and it's like really nasty, cruel and mind game stuff against me. Now it seems, and this is why it's hard, because it seems like I'm throwing them under the bus, right? Like my sister and my daughter throwing them under the bus. Well, I am. They threw me under the bus to destroy me, and they were mean and evil in their actions. I separate that evil from them. We don't fight against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers. The Lord has clarified that. And since I've been a Christian, I've always walked in forgiveness, and I still do. My heart's always remained open. I have not been able to bear holding grudges or bitterness in any way because of that walk that I have with the Holy Spirit. So that's a good thing. So my heart is right. But what's difficult is the Lord is pushing me to do this. I need to throw them under the bus. The spiritual man throws others under the bus to bring life, to expose evil, and to show good. Just look at the prophets of old. God's goodness is in it. Everything backfires on the devil. He is the biggest failure, the most pathetic creature ever created. He is the biggest loser. Need I go on? Anyway, the first time I noticed my sister's behavior, doing something that I had no explanation for, was when I was 12. She was 15. I borrowed my Life Be In It. You may have heard of that brand from right back then. It's called Life Be In It. It had a wee emblem saying Life Be In It, and it was a sweatshirt. So this was the logo. Now it was very white and very hard to keep clean. I had hand washed it. I was wearing it during the afternoon, ready to go roller skating that evening. Don't laugh. That's what we used to do. She asked me if she could borrow it. I said yes, but I needed it back clean for tonight. I asked her if she was going anywhere. She said no, she's just going to be around the house. But I couldn't say no. I was a kind girl, and I wanted to make my sister happy. We give the people we love the shirt off our backs. God knows our hearts. That's part of why we are called. When I asked for it back 3 or 4 hours later, as I was ready to leave to go roller skating, she said, no. That was it. She just said no. I got really wound up. I went through the agreement that we had made, that she would return it to me, give it back to me. And I clarified that she wasn't even going anywhere, that she was just hanging around the house. Why did she want it? I asked her a third time, but she just said no, just to my face, no. I'd never done this before. We weren't a family that hit each other. I punched her in the face. It's the first time I'd ever punched anyone. Mum ran out because she was crying. She heard and my mother was the one that shamed me. She shamed me, and it was me who was in the wrong. I didn't get to go out. So both of them really were acting strange. I couldn't explain why either of them did what they did. This is what life is like. You can't relate to the behaviour. Anyway, more recently, I reached out to my sister for support over Amy. That's my daughter, beginning of last year. Because she was acting strange, doing things that I couldn't explain. This is when she persecuted me. So this I did, not really because I trusted her. I was now older and I knew enough to know that she had betrayed me in the past. But because it was just normal. It's the expectation that you turn to your family and your siblings to get support. This was her niece, so I spent many an hour talking to her on the telephone, so forth. The thing is, God always seems to use my sister in pictures and dreams to symbolize and represent the mean. That's why I need to let you know what she has done in my story towards me. So the mean are the religious. Keep this in mind all the time. This is the purpose for sharing this. This is why I share it, right? That God is trying to get you to think about the mean religious spirit. You need to know I had already forgiven my sister for not being there for me, and I haven't shared this, so this is another example. Just quickly what she has done. When my first husband and took my children against a court order to the North Island to live in a small town thousands of miles away in the North Island, right? My sister, she sat on the fence. She never contacted me, yet she knew what was going on because she made regular visits to see them. It was now only an hour and a half drive for her to go and see her nieces and nephew in the weekends. That was all she cared about. Now, I mentioned that just to let you know that I had forgiven her for that. I never trusted her again, but in saying that, here I am last year sharing with her the burden that I had with what was going on with Amy. So she's having, my daughter, these psychotic episodes. Then my mother died. So this is how I found out that she was dying. It was by phone, and it was not by my sister, and she knew. She had in fact known, I know, for 3 days before I found out by phone. And the reason I know this is because when my daughter shot through one night in the middle of the night, just in a towel and a dressing gown, no shoes, and it was cold night, she just disappeared. She left her computer open, and I read her Facebook and her communications, and this is one of the ones that I came across later on, and that was that my sister had had a conversation with Amy 3 days before, and this was a Friday that I got a phone call 3 days before, and had organised to pay for her to get a bus ticket down to the hospital where my mother was lying dying. And she had said that she hadn't told me yet, so she needn't worry about me being there, because she didn't want to know me at that time, because I had actually made contacts to get her assessed in a hospital over a 3-day period. So she didn't want to know me, but it's just that I know what was going on. It was like my sister was getting my daughter to be there and assuring her that it would just be her and my daughter with my mother as she was dying, and that I would not be there. So this phone call I got was at work at the end of the day on a Friday. It was to advise me that my big brother wouldn't be able to make it to the hospital as my mother was dying, and that was a shock to me because I had not heard that she was dying. My oldest brother has been institutionalized since he was 18 with schizophrenia. So then I left work immediately, and out in the car I rang my sister, and I said to her, "Did you think to tell me what was going on with Mum? Because Jeffrey's nurse has just rung." She said, "No, Mum's fine. She's been sick before and she always picks up, and I've got things to do this weekend, so I'm not going until next Tuesday," which is 5 days later. I prayed about it, and I did everything I could to get accommodation. I got accommodation for the next day, contacted all my children, including Amy, and she didn't let on that she already knew. None of the children wanted to come. They were busy, but my husband and I went down there. So I found it on the Friday night. I arrived at about 1 o'clock on the Saturday morning, just mid-afternoon. And who was there? My sister, sitting beside my mother. My mother's bed was pushed up against the wall, and she was sitting in a chair holding her hand. Thing is, I mean, I went down, it's weird, I didn't add this, but because I've written this down so I wouldn't ramble, but it's a bit light. I went down there with nail polish and headphones and music and pictures and things to make her stay comfortable, but she was in a really bad way. She was in and out of consciousness. So the thing is that it was really awkward. At this stage, I had no idea that she had already told my daughter Amy 3 days earlier. I just thought that she had just failed to tell me. I had no ill feeling really towards her, but I couldn't understand how she was behaving. She wouldn't get off the chair. Like, when I arrived, you would have thought she would stand and let me sit and hold Mum's hand. I didn't have an opportunity to hold Mum's hand, and we were standing and sitting looking awkward for about 4 or 5 hours. I went up at one stage because I had a bracelet that I felt was special and I wanted to put it on Mum's wrist. When I put it on her wrist, my sister said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm putting a bracelet on Mum's wrist." You know, my mum, I know, would have loved it. She would, like, it wasn't an expensive bracelet, but like, she would always receive dandelions and weeds from me when I was a child, when I'd give her gifts. You know, flowers, bring her flowers. That was my mum and my relationship. She loved both her daughters, but this is what my sister said: take that off. You know, Mum would never wear that style of jewellery. And that was about all the conversation we had, other than I said to her towards the end, "Can I sit down?" And she said, "Can I sit down next to Mum?" She said, "When I'm ready, not when you're ready. Not everything happens on your time, Lisa." So, my goodness, I couldn't. So she never got up. So before I left and Marty left, I just said, "Look, we'll turn up tomorrow morning, and I just want to have some time with Mum on my own. All right, I'm going to be here in the morning." And I assumed that she would actually stand down and let me have some time with Mum, and I was looking forward to that. Later on that evening at 10 o'clock, I had a phone call that my mum had passed away. So that is behaviour that was unexplainable. Can you see why the Lord God has shown me the things He's shown me? He wants to explain this behaviour, why this happens to us, why people behave completely out of character. I wasn't the only one, because what happened from there got worse. I was completely cut out of the funeral plans. She organised them. I didn't have an invite to bring a effigy, which, speaking about, you know, your mother is sort of quite normal to do. She only had 2 daughters there. My brother turned up, but he wouldn't have been capable of doing that. So there was only 2 of us. It wouldn't have been too many speakers, and I was not invited to. I managed to do it in a really strange way, because my mother's boyfriend actually spoke to the other lady who Mum had granted the permission to organise her funeral and estate. He had rung her and said, "Oh, I think Lisa wants to speak at the funeral." And I never said anything to anyone. Of course I wanted to, but I wasn't going to push my way through. But because of that opportunity, and it was about an hour before the service, I said, "Yeah, okay, yes." I didn't say I wanted to, but I will. And I had something prepared. So I did get to speak at the funeral. And the funeral was lovely. My children were there, except Amy. But another thing went terribly wrong for Marty, which neither of us can really explain. I can now, but he couldn't. And I couldn't back then. Now, Marty and my mother had a good relationship based around music. He would always put music on that she loved, and because she had Alzheimer's, it was very important when she stayed. So she listened to his compilation, just the Christmas. She died in March, and at Christmas she had been listening to it. My sister, just before we left for the funeral, asked me and Marty if we knew any songs that Mum liked for the funeral, and Marty gave her a list, which was basically the ones It was easy because she and him had already picked them out, her favourite. When we went to the funeral and the music was playing, not one of those songs from that list was at the funeral playing. And the other really weird thing was, I don't understand it, but of all the slides that were going through, not one picture of Marty, and yet my mother and Marty were close, was on the slideshow. And he was 15 years we've been married. So it's really strange. But I know what it is. And I believe that all of you who are sheep recognise something similar in your story. So this is the fallen. These are the fallen angels. Hating the sheep. Being hunted. It's explained, it's solved. And now it's solved, the hunted become the hunters. That's what I am now. And that's part of this. That's why I'm throwing them under the bus. So now, the context of the dream. You know who Lynn is. Around the time that I had this dream, Lynn was the following year. It was the beginning of 2019. Lynn came back into the picture again because Amy let me know that she had paid for her, Amy, to fly down to her house to help distribute all of my mother's rings and jewellery. She had a lot, and between myself, I have children, and my little brother in Australia, my mum has 4 granddaughters, and then she has 2 daughters. So, of all the rings, the one that I knew was important was a ring that Mum had made out of my grandmother's sapphires. She had made them and designed them so they linked together. I'll show you a picture. See that blue one? There we go. See the blue one in the front? So she quite clearly said when I was in my early 20s, over and over again she said it, that one was mine and one was Lynn's. So I needed to see that ring, and I was pretty sure I'd get that ring at least. But I was disappointed to hear before Amy went down that Lynn had decided she didn't want her ring, which just is it's unexplainable to me. Well, I can explain it, but because it's your mother's last wishes. Anyway, she didn't like it. It wasn't her taste. That's what I believe. So she'd decided to gift it to Amy. I thought that's nice too, because that's my daughter. She has the other half of the ring. But I had concerns over Amy being able to keep it safe. It wasn't her style. I wasn't convinced she would wear it. And the only way to not lose a ring is to wear it. She was transient, and she was also expecting to go to America in the next month. I didn't want her to leave it at home in a flat, not being looked after, or travel with it in bags. Anyway, when she came to visit, before she went to my sister's, I offered her $1,000 because I knew she was in need of money. I didn't support this trip to America, but I just saw that it was an opportunity to maybe help. I offered her $1,000 if she would just give me the ring, if she wasn't going to wear it when she went down there, to look after, and I would give it back to her one day, and she would get it when I die anyway. she said, great. That seemed to suit her. But when she went down there, something happened and she changed her mind, which is fine. I was happy about that. But when she found out that I wasn't going to give her the $1,000 anyway, then she started to manifest and she tried to extort money from me. She had an amount, $10,000 she wanted for pain and trauma, because I owed it to her for putting her in a prison. So then that was the end of that. We're so up and down. So there was a little window where I spoke to her over the rings, and then she dropped me over this money. That would have broken my heart again, except for the fact that God had already come in and given me this dream. So this is the dream. God had given me a dream before she turned on me because of this ring. It was the night before it happened. So I woke up knowing that something was going to happen. I didn't know what. And when she was on the bus, that's when we had this text message session where she texted me asking for extortion money. I was forewarned that Lynn had laid a trap, but I would not be hurt. That's what I got from this dream. And it was Lynn who did it. She knew somehow how it would play out. That's why she didn't take the ring. And she offered it to Amy. How do they know these things? Because they're supernatural beings. To set a trap to upset me, to upset Amy and me all over again, which worked, except I wasn't upset, only Amy. Amy was the collateral damage again. She also sent a picture to Amy that I saw on Facebook, and underneath she said 3 generations of women. And in the picture was my sister, Amy, and my mum. That really gave her away. She'd excluded me and included herself. Anyone that knows anything about lines and family lines know that 3 generations of woman is the mother, the daughter, and the daughter's daughter, the granddaughter. It's not the mother, the sister, and the other sister's daughter. Anyway, I know, the Lord had shown me, is jealous, full of jealousy, and wanted to take my family and have my family. She always felt that way about Amy. And the proof of it was how she responded when the children were up north. It was her opportunity to be the major part in their life. I'm going to share the dream now. Now you know who Lynn is, or makes sense. So we're in a high ceiling space. I realised later, it was the space above a theatre, like a theatre concert. Now, when I say we, it was my sister Lynn and I. Both of us were wearing high-vis shirts like you wear in construction. We were a team. I was at the sawhorse cutting floorboards, very wide floorboards for a heritage building. As I was cutting, I came across a board, and we were recycling these boards to place them back down, but this board had this big knot in it, I know it doesn't make sense, but the knot was so big that I reported it to Lynn, who was my foreman in this dream. She was in charge of the job and I was the plague. I alerted her to the fact that it was a safety issue, that it was big enough for somebody to fall through. She decided to not heed this warning. She said, just put it in. And I obeyed. Well, she was the boss. Then, later on, I fell through that hole. Now, this was when I knew it was a theatre. Once I fell through that hole and I was below ground, I knew it was a theatre that we were above. I fell through the hole. There was a huge audience sitting in the dark watching a show or a concert or something. Very dark. There's no way, though, that they would have missed me as I was falling from the roof, the ceiling in front of them. I was only about 3 rows back and in the centre. It was like slow motion. I was coming head first down from above and I was just falling, and I've never had a falling dream before. No one noticed. And the thing is, it was very real and graphic. There was no blood, but I sort of crumpled to the ground. I ended up, like I said, landing on my head so hard, and my head bent right into my shoulders, and my body curled, and the rest of my body just went thump. But the word that I got, this is when I heard the Lord in the dream, was that I wasn't hurt. I just got up. I fell. I crumpled to the ground, but my neck was not broken, my skull was not cracked, and my back or spinal cord was not severed. So that was the part of the dream that warned me that I was going to fall down a hole that was a trap, that my sister, the religious spirited female, had laid. So because I knew that was going to happen, and when it happened that day, I had so much peace. You know, sometimes these things happen to you, and I've got a lot of warning dreams like that where things happen to you, but because you know that the Lord knows, you don't feel like you're alone, and you know that it's all part of a big plan. And this is the big plan. I'm sharing it. He also, and he does this in a lovely way, rebuked me. I knew that it was all my fault. Well, not all my fault, but it was my fault. See, I let her be the boss of me. In construction, we are taught to report health and safety concerns. I've been a builder the last 6 years, so that's why it was a construction dream. We are taught to follow instructions. We are taught not to follow instructions, even if it's by higher authorities, like my sister who was the boss, because in reality, we are actually responsible for our own safety. And both parties, the boss and the plagues who work at the bottom, get hefty fines as a consequence of doing of unsafe practices. So this is why it was my fault. I let her be the boss of me. Don't let the religious mean be the boss of you. They are blind guides. Jesus condones you to, oh yes he does. Does he condone you to? Yeah, he does. Jesus condones you to work out your own salvation in fear and trembling. You never let them be the boss. He never let them be the boss of him, the religious spirits. He called them snakes and vipers, and we should too. Here we go. Last bit. The morning of that dream I was warned, like I said. I was messaged by my daughter as she bussed home from my sister Lynn's. And the whole circumstance of it and the stress of it caused her to manifest wickedly. You know, I was upset that the whole situation had upset her, but the thing is, my sister laid the trap and Amy ended up in the middle of it. Yes, she behaved badly, but she was in the middle of it. I always have a heart for her. So she would never, my daughter would never ever act this way without it being Satan. Never. This is the most uncharacteristic behaviour. She's not the same person. And it is no longer unexplained behaviour. Not to me. I am awake. So I hear from God. I expect it now and are not hurt. I walk away from any attack unscathed. The next part of the dream is about the pile of ashes. I'll read it quite quickly because I'm going to go back and interpret the ashes part of it after I explain the second ashes dream. Part 4 will extrapolate on the two dreams, the ashes part of it. So I get up and I walk along the aisles, like I've fallen. I get up, I walk along the aisles past the people. Remember, I landed in the front 3 or 4 aisles, rows back from the stage. Still, nobody checks to see if I'm all right. It's like I don't exist. Then, while walking down the end of the aisle at the side, you know how there's round the wall at the end of a theatre, there's a wider aisle. I walk out to it and start walking down towards the stage. There's a man who walks up, and I just know that it's him who walks up. He doesn't really say anything, and there's 2 or 3 others, and they're all part of some type of club that they want me to join. They think that I'm the same as them. Now, I'm not sure if I have found fellowship or not. It seems by my actions that I know that it's not, because I didn't go anywhere with them. I just continued walking in the spirit, and I walked right up to the stage. Now, I went up the steps. On the stage, like they were a band, like a 7-piece band. One on the left side of the stage, one part of the band, and I think it had a violinist and a big bass violin thing, whatever you call them, and a saxophone. They were on the left. Now they see me. I capture their eyes. One of them in particular. Now they look really sheepishly at me. Then I walk across the stage to the other musicians. I walk right past the singer that's in the centre. Now there on the right side of the stage facing forward. There's two guitarists, be the bass and the main guitar, and then a drummer on the platform above. He's in the back corner. As I get to there and I'm looking at this group of musicians, it's like it replays in my head. I remember what I saw when I caught the eye of one of the musicians on the other side. They were all looking sheepishly, but it's like one of them sort of like did this with his eyes, and I replayed the direction in which his eyes looked. I just knew that he was showing me something that was hidden, and I looked down at the direction that his eyes had glanced at, and there, right in front of me on the floor, was like a board, and it wasn't sitting flat on the ground. It was covering something, and it had leads over it. So I leant down and I lifted it up, and the leads come off it, and I put it aside, and that's where I exposed this pile of ashes. Big pile of ashes they were trying to hide. I believe that when I started walking towards them, that's when they hid it quickly. Just after I fell into the theatre during their performance. It's like, oh shit, what it? Like that. And I woke, right? Now I know it's an altar. It's a sacrificial pile of ashes. They did nothing to stop me other than pretend that they had been doing nothing, just performing, trying hard to look innocent. But one of them had to give it away with his eyes. So this is the ashes on the earth. The sacrifice, they say, goes up, but I know it goes down. It is exposed. I caught them out. I found out later the man who gave me, because the other character was the false hope who wanted me to join that club. The false hope was that I believed that maybe I would have someone like me to fellowship with. But he was actually another fallen angel, Satan. He ended up, I had met him, but I got to know him better. He was the one who hurt Glory's eye. So it was good I didn't join that club. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Because that's the end of the dream. I need to pray. I want the Lord to give me more, especially about this sacrificial pile of ashes. So I've got one more ashes dream to share, and then I'm hoping that the Lord will come pull the two dreams with the ashes, and the one that I saw this morning where I saw the pillar of fire coming down, the ashes, and then I just had the impression that from that pillar it spiraled down like a portal. So I'll give you a part 3, which is my second dream. Second dream of the pile of ashes. Thanks.